Hello. Poem work, building performance. A bit scary. Don't be scared. There's nothing scary about what we're going to do. We're going to be working on a poem that I'm very fond of. It's called Sea Fever by John Masefield. It was written in 1902 when he was 24 years old. So that's a long time ago, 118 years ago. But the theme of the poem is just as relevant today as it was back then. If you've been to the seaside recently or seen images of the seaside on the news or in a film or in a YouTube video, you'll know what it's like. The sea is a very dangerous place, a very wonderful place, a place you can play, splash about and have a great time. But we should always have a great respect for the sea because it's very, very powerful. The point of this poem work is to help you improve your articulation and your clarity and to get used to having stamina and discipline as you're reciting a poem. Now, don't be too scared again. You will have to learn some of this poem off by heart. Only 4 lines. Yeah, there's 12 lines in the poem, but we're only going to concentrate on the first 4 lines of the poem. Now, there's plenty of time, several weeks in fact, to learn this, but at the end of it, I'd like you to be able to perform it, if you like, to the camera, yeah, and we can all enjoy your interpretation of it. Now, what you try to do in this exercise is not a case ever of getting things right or wrong, yeah? As we go on this journey, you mustn't worry about getting things right or wrong. You'll just find that things will either work or they don't work so well. Yes, so don't put too much pressure on yourself about trying to please other people by getting it right. The way you ultimately do the poem performance is down to you. It's your own unique interpretation of how you want to do it. Yeah? All we will applaud you for is your bravery in trying. That's all we ever ask you to do, is to try. Now, I've sent you a link with the poem on it. And if you can't find that, you can always just Google the poem. It's quite a famous poem, so it's easy to find. As I say, it's called Sea Fever by John Masefield, and we only have to concentrate on the first 4 lines of the poem. Now, when you're learning lines, sometimes I find it quite easy to do it in a funny voice or a silly accent, or even to sing the lines. In actual fact, this actual poem called Sea Fever was actually set to music by a composer called John Ireland, and it's actually quite a well-known song. So if you want to listen to the song as well, you can look that up as well. John Ireland is the name of the composer. And it's actually a song I sang when I was at school quite a long time ago. Not quite as long as 1902. So all I want you to think about is the seaside and the images and the smells and the sounds that are created by a trip to the seaside. When we communicate through words as actors, we often have to use images in our heads to try and convey what we want to say. Images are incredibly powerful, and if we can use those to match up with our voice, it's amazing what can happen. Because always remember, there's always someone in the theatre who is visually impaired. They can't see very well, so they can't see what's going on stage. They rely on these things, yeah? Your ears to hear. So we must respect that enormously. They've paid their money to get to the theatre, yeah? We need to respect that. They're in the audience. They deserve to understand and to hear what is being said, yeah? So we need to work very hard on our articulation and the clarity of our voice, yeah? And sustaining it with a good breath support, which you've been working on in your voice exercises, yeah? Working on those abdominal muscles, getting the diaphragm to expand like that big expanding house. So that's what we're going to be doing with this, just enjoying the work as we go along. So I'll just read out the poem now, actually. I think I know it off by heart, so hopefully I won't have to look at my notes. And we'll just listen to it very carefully. So I'll say it very slowly and then even slower, and we'll just go through it one word at a time, yeah? And then we'll see where we get with that. Shall we try that? So this is Sea Fever by John Masefield. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. And the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sail shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. Okay, so that's the first 4 lines, and we won't do the rest of the poem. So it's 4 lines of very evocative words, really, about the sea, yeah, and the mood perhaps that the person who's written the poem is in. So we're just going to do this again, and you can just say the words one by one after me, just so we get a feel of what the words sound like, the shape of the words. Lots of nice vowels in that first 4 lines, yeah? So we'll just say the words very slowly together so we get a feel for the actual sounds of the word. Okay, here we go. So you just repeat after me each word. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sail shaking and a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. How did you get on with that? Good? So there's some lovely evocative words of the imagery of this ship. This ship that he's seeing, or he's on perhaps, it's got a big tall mast, yeah? Yeah, and white sails shaking. So it must be a windy day if the sails are shaking, yeah? And it's got a wheel, like an old, not like a steering wheel in a car, but a ship has a wheel. Yeah, you've probably seen it in Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. One of those old-fashioned ships where you have to turn the wheel to try and change the direction of the rudder in the ship to see which direction you want to try and go in. So it's a very much an evocative poem of the sea and sailing. Yeah, and it's probably quite a wild and wet, windy day. Yeah, the language that he uses in the poem. So very much when you practice this poem, and just keep watching this video again and again to work with the words, very much in your own imaginations, because you've all got terrific imaginations. In your imaginations, think about the imagery of what this poet who's written this poem, what this guy John is seeing. What does he see? And what does he smell? You know, when you go to the seaside, maybe you've been on a boat. I haven't been on a boat for a long time, but you smell the sea, you smell the salt. The seaweed could be a bit pongy sometimes, but there's lots of smells. Yeah, and the sounds, and maybe there's some seagulls screaming in the background. Yeah, lots of images, lots of sounds. So what I'd like you to do for the rest of this session is to make a list, get some help if you need that, write down a list, or get someone to help you write down a list of all the things that you first think of when you think of the seaside and the sea. It might be, things like fish and chips, sandcastles, buckets and spades, amusement arcades, all sorts of things like that. And think of the smells as well. The smell of the sea. What other things can you smell? Yeah? The smell of candy floss when you put it right close to your face. Different things you can buy at the seaside that might give smells away. All the sounds, the seagulls, people laughing and screaming as they put their feet in the water for the first time. Think about all the things that you might feel, or you can imagine other people feeling when they go to the seaside. Yeah? And very much when you refer to this poem, when you look back at the first 4 lines of this poem, which is what we're going to learn, just think about what the writer, what John Masefield, what he might be seeing, what he might be smelling, yeah, and feeling. Is he happy, do you think? Or is he sad? Is he a melancholy, that rather wonderful word which is somewhere between sad and, grief, and we don't quite know what it is. Yeah? So you can decide how you think the person who's written this poem is feeling. And can you relate to that? Are there days when you feel sad or melancholy? Or is he happy? Is he feeling quite refreshed going down to the sea? Because the poem begins with, I must. You know, it's an urge, you know. It's not a, I'd like to go down to the sea. It's, I must go down to the sea again, yeah? I must go down to the seas again, yeah? He must go down. So, you know, he's got this feeling in him. What mood is he in? So for the rest of the session, as I say, make a list of all the things that you associate with the seaside, you know, the sounds, the smells, the images, you know, the boats on the horizon, maybe some cliffs in the distance, a lighthouse perhaps, and think of all the smells, yeah? All the sounds and the smells and the images you can think of. Make a long list of them, yeah? And as you're practicing this poem, you know, start to feel what images you might see as you're saying the words, you know? The tall ship, you know, Google some images of tall ships, yeah? The old clippers, as they're called, you know, these old big sailing boats, yeah? And also think about what things in the poem might mean, like all he asks, you know, is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. Because before we had compasses, sailors used to use the stars on a clear night to guide them. The stars were their compass. That's why they liked clear nights. They didn't want cloudy nights because then they couldn't use the stars as their guide. So think about all the things in this poem that, you know, if you don't know the meaning of them, let's find out. As actors, we must know the meaning of every word we say. Yeah? So have a look at all the words and what they mean. Get someone to help you if you want. You know, look at all the different words in the poem and what they all mean. Yeah? But the main thing for this is to say, it's for clarity and diction and for a discipline and stamina that you require as actors to be able to get this to, you know, performing in a few weeks' time. Okay? So in the next session, we'll talk about what lists, well, I'll talk about the list I've compiled. I'll make a list of all the things I thought of about when I go to the seaside, what I saw, what I felt, what I smelt. Yeah? I'll make my list and I'll tell you what I thought, and then we'll see what we want to do with the images and the sounds and how we want to apply them to this poem, how we can make this poem come alive, yeah? Because that's what we want to do. We want to make the language come alive. And every word can be filled with imagery and with sound, yeah? So let your imaginations run wild, enjoy it, and don't worry about learning the lines just yet. That will come. That will come with practice, yeah? One of the worst things about being an actor is learning your lines, and that's not too bad. So don't worry about that just yet, but just keep practice. Come back to this video when you can, and just practicing, you know, sea fever again and again, yeah? Okay, so I'll see you in the next session. Enjoy.